Good evening. It's Tuesday, February 19th, 2019, and it's 6 p.m., and this is a meeting of the Law and Ordinance Committee. On my right is Mr. Phillips, on my left is Mr. Sievert, and we are here to discuss a change in the Ohio Revised Code that we need to enact. Mr. Kerr.
Good evening. The state of Ohio recently passed House Bill 228, and broadly speaking, that deals with firearms. Where it concerns the city is in a couple different areas, but this legislation just deals with one of those. This House bill preempts local ordinances, and it limits what cities can enact as far as firearms legislation. So, for instance, it indicates that any municipal legislation cannot be more restrictive than the state law. And within our ordinances, the city had approximately 8 different ordinances that regulated such things as carrying concealed weapons, carrying like sawed-off shotguns, things like that. But all of the city's legislation mirrored the state law. However, this new House Bill 228, what that does do is if the city has something that's more restrictive than the state law, it allows a private citizen to bring suit against the city, even without any sort of injury, and say, look, you're violating my right to bear arms, and they would be entitled to attorney fees as well as a number of specified other types of damages. Now, as I mentioned, the city's laws exactly mirrored the state laws. So presently, the city is not in danger of violating House Bill 228. However, as you're surely aware, that state law changes quite frequently, and there would be a danger of, if state law changed and the city missed it or wasn't aware of the state law change, that somebody could bring suit against the city. Now, our local police can still enforce the state laws, and we don't have to use our own ordinances, so it really doesn't have a big impact on how the city's going to enforce any sort of firearm regulations, but it just eliminates any sort of risk of liability on that. I should mention additionally that cities have 6 months from the date that this bill was passed to fix their ordinances, so to speak. But there's also been sort of a healthy debate as the impact on any sort of zoning laws and things like that. And there's presently what's being suggested as far as the repeal of the various ordinances. There's no suggestion that anything like that be changed, but we're just going to monitor the situation and look at the interpretation of the impact of this House Bill 228. So what is being suggested is that 6 or 7 different ordinances, codified ordinances, be repealed. And that, I mean, it just means that we can't enforce the city ordinances, but the city can still enforce the state ordinance or the state law on that.
So all this does is create consistency really throughout the state.
Oh, yes, that's exactly what House Bill 228, it makes it very consistent on what your regulations are on carrying a concealed weapon, what type of weapons you can own or possess and things like that. It makes it consistent, and that's the goal of that. And so, by doing that, the city will still be able to enforce the state law. We're just eliminating our own regulations in relation to that.
Okay. Mr. Phillips.
Thank you. In reading some of the legislation that has come out of the state, they're in a state of flux and confusion right now as to some issues that have come up within their own regulations that I don't know how to paraphrase this except to compare it to a sanctuary city status, in that they have created laws that they don't want to enforce because they know that they're going to repeal them or adjust them. Is that what I'm kind of getting the thrust of?
Yeah, and some of the larger cities have been more aggressive trying to impose firearms restrictions. And specifically, I know Columbus was actively looking to get some regulations in there. And I think this House Bill 228, or at least this portion of it, was really focused on these larger cities that were trying to be more restrictive.
Okay.
But nonetheless, Troy needs to comply with it.
And did you have a sense of when the state was looking at trying to get a handle and correcting that ambiguity, if you will? Because I think this is correct. I think we're doing the right thing here. But not having a list in front of me that outlines the laws that we're talking about specific to Troy, it creates statewide, probably outside of our purview here, some questions in my mind as to what their time period is. I guess that's where I'm going with it.
Right. Well, I know that municipalities have 6 months from December 18th to update those. And I believe there's an article in the paper today or yesterday how they inadvertently prohibited some things that they did not want to prohibit. So I imagine they will go back and amend that, but that will not impact 228 on what we're doing here. Even I suspect they'll go back and amend what's already been passed, rather than repealing this and then doing a new one.
Well, I was concerned also from a law enforcement standpoint because it was restricting some of our law enforcement personnel into what they could or could not do, and I'm very concerned about that. So, yes, okay.
And I should note that this has been, there's been plenty of discussions with the police department on what's being proposed here as well.
Great.
And I think we're all on board.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't want to enter a municipality that may be more restrictive and all of a sudden I'm breaking the law, and then I enter another municipality and I'm fine again, so.
Sure.
Mr. Siebert?
I spoke with Grant over the phone on this a little before. He clarified all my questions. I don't have any concerns. All we're doing is evidence just going to make everything comply, and that's what we need to do by the statute. So.
Yeah, we're just helping Ohio become uniform across the state.
Any other council members have any comments or questions? Mr. Siebert?
I mean, if we go forward, I have no problem with it.
Is this emergency or just?
It doesn't, no, we have 6 months or 4 more months to do something on it.
Mr. Phillips?
I'm fully in support of the legislation.
I am too. Let's move forward with it. Anything else to come before L&O?